Hello, everyone, and welcome to the long and winding Royal Road. This is what is this? Episode 28, I believe, of this show. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But I do believe it's episode 28. You know what I can do before I introduce our guests is just go to the Post Wrestling website and just check what number was the last one. It was 27. So this is indeed episode 28 of the long and winding Road. And my special guest today, someone I've actually wanted on this show for a while, but they are just so busy because he is the mastermind, behind the Grappl app. He's an integral member of the Grappl Patreon. I'm glad he's here today because someone I have a lot of respect for, and that's Gareth Hodgson. Gareth, thank you for joining me finally on the long winding Road. How are you today?
I'm very good. I'm delighted to be here. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, so it's good to be able to be asked to come on again and be able to free up time to come and chat a bit of wrestling with you.
Yeah. So for people who might not know, so Gareth is the creator of something called the Grappl app, which is an app you can put on your phone that will let you rate wrestling matches that you watch, and you want to give it a 5-star rating or something. Unfortunately, fortunately for me, he doesn't break the scale like certain people and have 7-star matches or any shit like that. So it's a 5-star rating, and Gareth created it almost 2 years ago now or longer.
Even longer now, yeah. I think it was 2018 that we launched. I think, yeah. It's 4 years now. It's flown by.
And in relation to that, you also came up with the idea of having a podcast related to the app in terms of having the name associated with the podcast manned by friends of Post Wrestling, and that would be Benno, JP Houlihan, and originally Joe Lemon. And then Joe left, and then you stepped in to fill his shoes. And I thought it's going to be tough without Joe, but you started doing the show, and I was like, wow, Gareth's amazing with his analysis. And also you have pretty much the same taste in wrestling as I do. So the shit you see on TV, you'll be like, that shit, that's good. That shit. I'm like, yes, I agree. And then Benno will talk about death matches. I'm like, shut up, Benno.
I love that. Gareth came on and he was great because he shares the same opinions as me.
Hey, that's all I need. It's like whenever Jamesy comes on, it's like, I agree with that.
No, it was something that I'd never had any desire to do at all. Coming out and just putting your opinions out there, and I was always kind of. When I launched the app, I knew Benno, knew JP and Joe, and when they came to me and the idea of putting spotlights and making it associated with Grappl, I was like, yeah, great. And then they sort of slowly kind of, why don't you come on this Match of the Year podcast, and why don't you come on this one? And then Joe left, and it was like, well, I can help you out for a month or something. And before I knew it, I was suddenly recording about 10 hours a week and watching about 20 hours of wrestling a week to be able to talk about it with the level of depth that I would want to talk about. It was a weird one. Definitely one that I never intended to do. But I've scaled things back. I think I was pretty hardcore full on it for about a year and a half there. But
but you're still doing occasional guest spots and certain special shows for the Patreon and stuff.
That's right. There's certain things where I do have an interest, and Benno and JP know what buttons to push, so that they'll tell me that they're doing a Bret Hart show or something like that, and then I'm like, oh, I'm in, kind of. They just drop that little seed in there every month. There's always something to just keep pulling me back in, which is good. It's nice to kind of still be able to do it, and nice to be asked to come on, different things like this, and hopefully where people have heard me on there and want me to go on their shows as well. It's always nice to be able to do that.
Well, we will get to some plugs at the end of the show, but I do want to mention that you have a nice tracksuit top there that is Grappl branded. It's very nice looking. I also have a piece of merchandise.
Good lad.
That you sent me, by the way. I was gonna pay for it, but you were like, no. What's your address? You just sent it to me, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No worries, no worries. It's a lovely, lovely bit of merch there. And if you visit grapplapp.com, you can get a T-shirt of your own in black or white for a small fee. Now delivering worldwide.
There you go. But the track top it was limited edition, and I missed the window on it. But maybe when you guys do a new one in the future, I will be on top of that. So.
Well, I don't know how popular this CM Punk style one's going to be in the future, so we might have to pick one for somebody who's a bit more popular, a bit more on
Well,
trend.
if I may say so, he's still popular with me.
Yeah,
Maybe even more so. That's all I'll say about that. That's all I'll say about that. But we're going to be talking about All Japan Pro Wrestling, and we're going to be talking about a match. Normally, we talk about a match from the 90s, as it says in our banner here, AJPW in the 90s. But sometimes we kind of get out of the shoebox, so to speak. And actually, the last few episodes, we haven't been talking about anything from the 90s. But as long as the match is good and it's under the All Japan banner or related, because sometimes we talk about Noah matches, but today we're actually not going to be in the 90s. We're going to go in the past. We're going to go to 1989. In fact, we're going to go to, I believe, January 28th. 1989. We're going to talk about a match that you picked. Tell us what match we're going to talk about today, Gareth.
That's right. Going back to January 89, and we're going to be talking about the British Bulldogs versus Joe and Dean Malenko, the Malenko brothers. So yeah, I think that was the New Year Giant series of 1989. So I knew the 90s premise, but when you suggested about coming on the show, this was one that sort of sprung to mind pretty quickly, and I thought, I'm sure I can get away with a 12-month just outside the 90s there if I go back to this one.
Well, what made you decide to pick this particular match? I assume you had watched it before.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think probably one of the reasons this sprung to mind, as I said to you, I'm definitely not an authority on All Japan, certainly not an authority on early 90s All Japan, and I haven't looked at and listened to previous shows, and obviously you've got people who probably do know what they're talking about when it comes to All Japan a bit more than me, and there's a lot obviously there's a lot of I suppose your mind immediately goes to the Four Pillars and things like that, and I was just thinking where there's people out there who are definitely more bigger authorities on that type of thing than me, it was best to say, okay, well, let's try and pick something that's slightly different, maybe a bit left field or something to what might normally be considered for this. I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling, and this was one that I watched a few years ago when I was just doing a bit of a deep dive really into the British Bulldogs and just thinking, what are the best British Bulldogs matches out there? How good are they actually? They're sort of one of these teams where they, throughout my 30+ year wrestling fandom, they're always kind of earmarked as one of the greatest tag teams of all time. People tend to lean on obviously your WWF stuff, your Heart Foundation stuff and things like that. But I was thinking, what, my knowledge is actually a bit lacking beyond that really. So I kind of just went out there and just tried to watch a little bit more. And I think as I did that, this was the match that really stood out for me in terms of the one that I just enjoyed the most. A lot of the elements of this match just fit into my wrestling sensibilities a lot more than some of the other matches that I referenced. And I also thought it was probably one that you'd probably have a good opinion on as well. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So,
well, this is a match that this is my first time watching. It was preparation for this show because it can be for me sometimes a bit of a I don't know, effort to just go back to even further in like Japanese pro wrestling history, particularly with All Japan, because I will admit as a big fan of the company. I will say that not every match from the 80s is that great. There's a lot of great matches, but there's like a lot of things to slog through. But when you suggested this, I'm like, okay, I was a huge fan of the British Bulldogs in the WWF. I was familiar with some of their stuff. Excuse me. Outside of the company as well, including their work in All Japan. And I was a huge fan of Dean Malenko, and I actually became a fan of his brother Joe as well, watching stuff on YouTube as well. Pardon me. Sorry about that. So I was like, okay, great. I mean, 4 amazing wrestlers going to be in a tag team match. And I, like you, I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling. So I thought this is great. I'm going to look forward to actually just watching this match. And now I watched it. I've watched it twice, and I'm going to talk about it with you. And I will, safely say that if you put this match up on the app, the Grappl app, I will probably give it like a 4-star rating. That's how much I did like it. So let's get into it. Let's talk a bit about some background. I want to give a bit of background on the participants in this match, which would be, the Dynamite Kid, Dave Boy Smith, Dean Malenko, and Joe Malenko, and particularly want to look at their history in All Japan Pro Wrestling. So let's start off with probably the biggest star, the most legendary person in this match, which would be, I would say, would be Dynamite Kid more than, say, Dean Malenko or David Boy Smith. He starts his Japanese career at first with New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1980. And by 1981 through 1983, he has his legendary feud with the original Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama. In 84, he jumps to All Japan Pro Wrestling with Davey Boy Smith. And this is part of like a big defection with Riki Choshu, who just decided, I don't want to work for Inoki and New Japan anymore. I'm going to go work for Giant Baba and All Japan. And he leaves. He takes Yoshiaki Yatsu. He takes a ton of other people with him, including Dave Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, to go to All Japan Pro Wrestling. By 1985, Dynamite Kid is splitting his time between the WF, All Japan, and doing some Stampede dates primarily with Dave Boy Smith as the British Bulldogs. In between 1986 and 1988, he is pretty much a WWF wrestler and doing some Stampede dates as the Bulldogs. He does return to All Japan in 1989 as the Bulldogs, as part of the Bulldogs with Davey Boy. But by the fall of 1990, he is teaming with his British Bruisers partner, the person he would team with in Stampede Wrestling, and that would be Johnny Smith. No relation to Dave Boy Smith, even though I think the storyline in Stampede was that they were brothers, but they are actually not brothers because Johnny Smith's real last name is not Smith, believe it or not. I'm unheard of in wrestling.
Unbelievable.
Incredible. So, and this brings us, and that's primarily because, I think Dynamite and Davey Boy have their falling out, and Davey Boy has left to go back to the WWF. I think also doing a stint in WCW with Vader and Sid and Sting. Beach Blast, was it?
Round about 90. Yeah, it was late. Was it late 92, early 93? I think he moved on to WCW around that time. But yeah,
it's when he starts doing the braids. The not the greatest look for Dave Boy Smith there. So in 91 he's teaming with Johnny Smith. In 92 he doesn't wrestle at all because the injuries have really caught up to him. And even so, by 89 he is in terrible condition physically. His hips are gone. He's got a bad back, but he's being able to muster through it with the help of Davey Boy, with the help of his opponents and people taking care of him in the ring. But as we'll talk about in this match, he is adapted. He does not do so much of the high risk stuff anymore, but he relies more on his technical skills as a wrestler. But just to get back to his career, in 93, he does his last 2 matches for All Japan, teaming with Johnny Smith. And then he has his last match anywhere on a Michinoku Pro show on October 10th, 1996. And he is in a 6-man tag team match, teaming with Das Cross and Kuniaki Kobayashi against the original Tiger Mask, Sayama, Mil Mascaris, and the great Sasuke. And I wish I could tell you, wow, you should go out, check that match out. It's not very good. So, I mean, if you're curious about seeing a car wreck involving a bunch of guys who are not in the best, parts of their career, then sure. But if not, you do not need to watch this match.
And if you have fond memories of Dynamite as well, it's not one to watch either, because God, he doesn't look like the Dynamite Kid in that match, does he?
No, he does not.
Not just in ring physically, just. Oh.
It's kind of sad. As someone who was a huge Dynamite Kid fan, it was him and Steamboat were the guys who were okay, this is the kind of wrestling I like in the WWF, and then that's kind of informed my taste in wrestling throughout my very long fandom as a professional wrestling connoisseur, so to speak. But let's move on to Davey Boy Smith. He would start wrestling in All Japan on November 16th, 1984, as of course, along with David Dynamite Kid. They jump over with Riki Choshu from New Japan Pro Wrestling, along with most of Choshu's closest allies. In 1985, the Bulldogs are splitting their time between All Japan, WWF, and Stampede. I think that was like more of a favor to Stu Hart and the Hart family, like Vince allowing them to work Stampede dates. And again, by 86, he's primarily wrestling for the WWF and Stampede. By 89 to 90, he's working All Japan again, along with Stampede, and then again with the WWF. He does do a stint for Genichiro Tenryu's SWS promotion, working along those with his WWF dates from 1991 to 1992. By mid 1990, he is in Calgary. He's teaming with in All Japan, he's teaming with his, again, kayfabe brother, Johnny Smith, who's replaced the injured Dynamite Kid in All Japan Pro Wrestling. In 93, he does his last tour of All Japan, primarily this tour was primarily as a singles wrestler, including some dates in the Champions Carnival. So yeah, any thoughts about this kind of history they have in All Japan Pro Wrestling, Gareth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, again, like I say previously there, when it was one of those aspects that of, going out and just trying to just dig a bit deeper and just find out a bit more of them. Obviously, I was, well aware of the, when I'd seen the Tiger Mask stuff from New Japan, the All Japan stuff was definitely a blind spot to me, and it was one where, there's a host of different matches there for the Bulldogs as a whole that you can kind of, go on YouTube, go on Dailymotion, and pick out there. Going back to the early 80s. There's the different things there. Like there's a match with Teranishi and Kobayashi that Meltzer had given a really good rating to in the, I think it was 85. That one, there was another match with Mighty Inoue and Tiger Mask too, who was obviously unmasked, made a few appearances on this particular show over time. So there's a few different matches like that, right through to them working with. Working with the Can-Am lads as well, so there's a few different matches there ranging across that have were highly rated by either Dave Meltzer, by Cage Match and things like that you can can go out there and have a watch of as well. So again, I think it was one of those where you just sort of see that I suppose you see the different styles that they're able to work. You see the different ways in which they were like innovating and ahead of their time. You see the ways, as you mentioned there, how Dynamite's having to adapt as time goes on, and his body's breaking down a bit. Obviously, you're seeing Davey before he's taken too many steroids and is largely immobile, and his back's gone himself and things like that. Really, so it's a real good. I think the All Japan matches that I've watched for the Bulldogs, it's probably the biggest window for me that really demonstrates why the Bulldogs are held in the regard that they are. Because I think I hold my hands up. I've not I could probably count on one hand the amount of Stampede matches I've watched. My Bulldogs knowledge was probably again primarily WWF related as well. So again, I think it's one of those where you just see that different environment, different working style, just seeing them seeing them evolve, especially as you're picking those matches out and seeing them work with a variety of great opponents.
I do recommend checking out some of the matches they have with the team of Jumbo Tsuruta and Genichiro Tenryu, as well as with the aforementioned Can-Am Express of Doug Furness and Dan Crawford, or AKA Philippon, whichever nom de guerre you prefer for Dan Crawford. Those are great matches because I think particularly the Can-Am stuff, because there is such a similarity between the two teams. Crawford is very much kind of the parallel to Dynamite, and Furness being the powerhouse of the team who's very agile himself.
Yeah.
is kind of a mirror image of David Boy Smith in terms of stylistics in wrestling. So, but yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Well, there's one of those. It just sticks in my head from that rewatch that I did. There's a spot in one of those matches where Doug Furness and Davey Boy, they must get 5 minutes out of a full Nelson spot where they're just like exchanging full Nelsons, and it's so good, and it's just two powerful lads just exchanging full Nelsons, and honestly, the crowd reaction, the way it kind of, I don't know, the way it holds you, the intensity of it and things, it's, you know, two big lads doing one move between each other that is infinitely more engaging than, I don't know, some lads these days try to fit 40 moves into the same amount of times that they do that. It's proper work, proper wrestling. But again, I chose not to. While that match was one that I do enjoy, I probably chose not to go for that one, just because when you're thinking of Furness and you're thinking of Crawford in All Japan, you're obviously, there's other matches there that you probably bring to the fore and you think of a little bit more. So so that was probably the main reason the Malenkos match got the nod.
Well, I'm glad it did, because we'll talk about the Malenkos. Of course, we're talking about Joe, and of course the famous Dean Malenko, who's had a myriad career throughout wrestling, working for All Japan, New Japan, doing some, like, he started out as like in a shoot promotion with Akira Maeda, promotion, and then he's ECW, WCW, and which is probably the pinnacle of his career, is his WCW stuff, and of course he ends his career in the WWE. But let's talk about Joe and Dean here. They were brought to All Japan as a tag team on February 20th, 1988, and they worked there primarily as the Malenko brothers up until about June of 1992, which would see the end of Dean in All Japan, as he would jump to New Japan's junior heavyweight division in the fall of 92, which ended up being a much better fit for him, because he was never going to get a huge push in All Japan, because it's a very heavyweight focused promotion with not much of a junior heavyweight division. But here in New Japan, he's teaming with, Benoit as Pecos's kid, who he would later have success with as a tag team in WCW. He starts, he starts his association with Eddie Guerrero in New Japan that would continue in ECW and WCW. He's having matches with people like El Samurai, with Jushin Thunder Liger, with Koji Kanemoto, Shinjiro Otani. It's an amazing place for him to work, and I think this is where he really, really gets noticed more by mainstream wrestling fans in North America. Is more his time in New Japan rather than in All Japan. Joe would stay until March of 1992, and then would later resurface in the shoot style pro wrestling Fujiwara Gumi promotion in Japan. I think he wanted to kind of do more of that as he got older. And then I just had my last note is both Malenkos had a very understated and really underrated careers in All Japan Pro Wrestling as a tag team primarily. Joe did have some success as a singles in the junior heavyweight division, I believe, actually winning the All Japan junior heavyweight title a couple of times, and they left behind a lot of hidden treasure matches, and this being one of them, as as we're going to talk about, because like not many people, including myself, are like super familiar with the Malenkos doing tag team wrestling in All Japan, because they're not really talked about that much, which is a shame, because if there's a lot of stuff on on YouTube, Daily Motion, as you said, that wow, like holy, I'm going to watch this match they had with this fan cam match they have with like Steve Williams and Terry Gordy, like that. I haven't watched it yet. It's up there, and I'm like, okay, I gotta watch that, because like I want to see what that looks like, because I'm a huge fan of the Miracle Violence connection, and the Malenko brothers are both awesome wrestlers. That should be a good match. So I look forward to like just kind of doing more of a deep dive, more in the Malenkos than the Bulldogs, because I do think that's something that's people should, if you really love wrestling, you should really watch a lot of Dean Malenko, but also you should watch a lot of Joe Malenko. He's fucking awesome.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, this match in itself was just a huge eye opener to me on Joe Malenko, because obviously, everyone's much more familiar than with Dean Malenko. Obviously, the WCW run, obviously the mainstream run that he had in the US and things like that. I'd definitely pinpoint Dean Malenko as at that time where he came to ECW and was going into WCW has been someone who was probably quite, pivotal really, and probably the evolution of what I enjoyed in wrestling. And the more Dean Malenko that I saw, the more that stylistically my brain went more to a Dean Malenko style as being, what I enjoyed and what I got more out of from a wrestling standpoint. And again, that's something that's stood the test of time with a lot of what I like today. But Joe Malenko was somebody who, again, I'd seen very, very little of. When I went back and did this deep dive and watched this match, I remember thinking to myself, I need to just do a bit of a Joe Malenko deep dive, because I enjoyed his contribution to this match probably more than any of the other three participants in it, if I'm honest. And it's something that I've not done yet. Going back and rewatching this match twice this week in preparation for today, it just left me thinking, yeah, I just need to get that Joe Malenko deep dive done, because there's
we can
so
do that for
the
let's do that for the Patreon, for the Grappl Patreon.
There we go. We'll put it on the poll and see if Joe Malenko wins the vote.
That's right. Deep dive, and Benno's going to be scratching his head because are there any light tubes in this? I'm like, no, Benno, there's no light tubes in this. But let's talk about the card that this match appears on. It's part of the New Year Giant Series from 1989. It's day 17, and it's taking place at the fabled Korakuen Hall, and it's listed as having 2,750 people in attendance, and I can believe that that's the correct number, because this crowd is very loud and very vocal for this match. And there are certain camera shots where you see like Korakuen Hall is pretty much sold out, full, and it's always great when I see matches at Korakuen Hall from this era, just because like I've had the privilege and pleasure of going to Korakuen Hall many times and seeing so many great matches there. But like to see that it's not unchanged from the 1980s for the most part is pretty amazing to me. And I'll say, I keep threatening to say to JP as like, hey, let's go to Japan. I will fuck the Tokyo Dome. That place is a piece of shit when it comes to watching wrestling. We have to go to the Mecca, the true Mecca of professional wrestling. And that's Korakuen Hall. You should be joining us on a trip to Japan, Gareth, and we'll all go to Korakuen Hall.
Oh, I would absolutely love it. It's just that it's absolute bucket list, that stuff to me, and again, just going to Korakuen, I would do that over the Tokyo Dome any day of the week. And it's probably the venue that I type into the Grappl app more than any other as well, with the amount of shows and the amount of big matches that have happened there over the years as well. So it's if only for that, it's something that I need to visit. But yeah, that's one we definitely we've got this little world trip planned, really, haven't we? We need to do Toronto. We need to get you over to the UK. We need to do our little trip to Tokyo. Who knows? Next 10 years, maybe we'll
figure it out. We'll figure out. We got to get these the Patreon numbers up for Grappl and for Post, and then then Wei and John will like sponsor me to go on these trips. It's like, oh, you can we'll pay for it. Oh, that's amazing, guys. They're watching this right now, and Wei's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But anyways, this card starts off with a singles match between Mitsuo Momota, who defeats Tatsumi Kitahara in 9 minutes and 15 seconds. Next, we have a comedy tag team match, and I say it's a comedy tag team match because it has Haruka Eigen in it, and he's teaming with Motoshi Okuma, and they defeat Isamu Teranishi and Kenta Kobashi. Yes, in 1989, Kenta Kobashi was probably in an undercard comedy match, because that's where Kenta Kobashi was in his career at that time. A singles match, Mighty Inoue defeats Goro Surumi by DQ in 9 minutes and 16 seconds. Akio Sato went to a double countout with Leo Burke in 7 minutes and 29 seconds. I don't know who Leo Burke was, but the fact that he convinced Giant Baba to do double countout finish in Korakuen Hall against one of his guys. Hey, there you go. What clout this man must have had. Tag team match, Izao Takagi and Shinji Takano defeat Brian Adams, which I believe is Crush.
Indeed.
And Mike Miller, who I do not know who Mike Miller is, but he's probably someone that we probably all heard of. Maybe he's one of the sheep herders or something like that. Not Luke Miller, but maybe sheep herder like under a mask or something like that, like Jack Victory back in the day. But that
is just a name that stands out to me from PWI or something like that in there in like the top 10 rankings for like Portland or something like that. But yeah, that's about as far as my my knowledge of him is going to extend.
For Mike Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Bryan Adams. We all know who the great Bryan Adams was. Like, Crush. My favorite version of Crush is Japanese sympathizer Crush. I just want to put that out there. That match lasts 12 minutes and 16 seconds. 6-man tag team match. Giant Baba, Russia Kimura, who we talked about like last month. A great match they had with Tenryu and Stan Hansen. Oh my God. Did you watch that match, Gareth?
I haven't. No.
Oh my God. Watch that match. It is a master. You love tag team wrestling? That match is a masterpiece of like tag team psychology. So, and then listen to the review afterwards, of course. Baba, Kimura, and the Great Kabuki defeat Akira Taue, Shinichi Nakano, and Tiger Mask. This is probably the second version of Tiger Mask, which is, of course, Mitsuharu Misawa. That match takes place 16 minutes and 46 seconds. The great Danny Spivey, I'm sure a favorite of yours.
Yeah, but everyone will always go. Everyone will go to Wail and Mercy, won't they? But I'll always be a Dan Spivey and WCW guy.
Skyscrapers with Sid.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Danny Spivey defeats a young John Tenta, but probably not a young-looking John Tenta because he probably still looks like he's 45 at the age of 25. And that match lasts 4 minutes, 47 seconds. And the match we're going to talk about, the Bulldogs versus Malenkos. We're not going to talk about what happens in there until we get to the match, but that's our semi-main event. That Baba places as semi-main event is saying a lot about how he felt about both teams at this point in their tenure in All Japan Wrestling. But our main event was a 6-man tag team match that I'm desperately trying to find an unclipped version of. Gareth, it's Jumbo Tsuruta, Masanobu Fuchi, and Yoshiaki Yatsu taking on the Revolution stable of Genichiro Tenryu, Samson Fuyuki, and Toshiaki Kawada. Fuyuki and Kawada at this time were a young tag team by the name of the Footloose. And can you guess what their entrance music was? I hope Kenny Long has never watched All Japan Wrestling in 1989 because he there might have been a lawsuit against the NTV and Giant Baba there. But that match lasts 23:50 seconds. There's a clip version, and I was kind of skimming through it, and my God, the crowd is like unbelievable for that match. But they're unbelievable for the match we're going to talk about. I want to get that out of the way. This crowd loves this match. This crowd is like, there are people in the front row, like including like like it's not so common to see like a lot of women like just paying attention, just absolutely raptured by what the wrestling that's going on in this match. And just people, other fans you can just see are like, they got big smiles on their faces because this is at this time of the tenure of both the Bulldogs and the Malenkos. It's kind of a dream match between the fans. These fans are going to see. It's like, oh my God, what would happen if the Bulldogs took on the Malenko brothers? Well, now they're going to get to see it. And like the anticipation is right from the get-go is pretty high.
Oh, and like you say, it's, throughout the crowd reactions in this match, you talk about crowd reactions sort of like helping a match sometimes and helping like elevate a match sometimes. And it's absolutely, present in this just because they're the high spots here, they're absolutely on fire for. There's some of the pops for certain things here that you would look at with modern eyes and think are relatively small elements, but clearly they mean something within the construct of this match at that particular time as well. And the crowd going absolutely nuts for it. And again, it's just one of the things from this match that just really stands out to me. And you can see it sort of like build as the match progresses as well. And I think any wrestling match or any wrestling card that you can see where you've got the crowd reacting like this crowd is, then again it's always just going to kind of just pull you in and just engage you a bit more in what's going on in the action, and it certainly does that. But at the end of the day, the lads in the ring have got to be doing the right work to get the crowd to be reacting in that way, and my God, do they do it in this match.
Yeah. So we get to our introductions first. Joe and Dean are introduced first, and they are wearing matching red sweaters that I think might be left over from the 1988 Malenkos family Christmas get-together. They have some cool matching two-tone black and red trunks, but like, Joe's are red on the front and Dean's are black on the front. So I kind of like that. They match, but they're like distinctive for each member of the team. And those sweaters are quite amazing.
I think Joe just put his on backwards. I think they got changed in the dark or something. But no, those sweaters, it was definitely a buy one, get one free for the Malenko household that Christmas, wasn't
it? Maybe they just got it as a gift from, like, I don't know if they had kids at that point, but like they're just like, or maybe their dad was still alive. He's just like, hey, you guys are a tag team in Japan. You gotta match. Here's some sweaters. Oh, Dad, where'd you get these? Like Woolsworth or something back in the day. Who knows? Good old Boris Malenko shopping for his sons. There you go. Next are the British Bulldogs, and they are in their what I call, hey, we're from Calgary, Alberta, Canada phase of entrance gear with their fringe vests that look like, kind of a leftover from like a cowboy store in Calgary. Maybe like something that Brett didn't want to wear anymore. It's like, hey guys, you can have my old vest. Like I don't do the cowboy gimmick anymore. Okay, Brett, thanks. This is a kind of a downgrade to me, Gareth, from their satin jackets. You know what I'm talking about, right? The red satin jackets and Absolutely. The blue satin jackets. Those are fucking awesome. These are kind of shit.
Yeah, it's definitely a look, isn't it? And it's definitely got Calgary written all over it, like you say there. But I don't know. As much as it wasn't their best look, I think the lads from Wigan are still rocking that Canadian cowboy look, and we've still got Union Jacks there on display. Right. So we know they're not all in.
Well, their mullets are in full effect also in this match compared to the very classic tight cropped hairstylings of the Malenko brothers, and they have the blue underwear over white tights look with the Union Jack on the seats, and as someone from the United Kingdom, you must be so proud to see that, like the flag paraded on the ass of two wrestlers.
Brings a tear to the eye, doesn't it? Yeah, it's oddly, it's one of those things where I don't know. I think you've got to be a certain sort of person in the UK who loves the old Union Jack. So whether it's on somebody's ass or it's not, it was never the most the biggest pull to the British Bulldogs of me. It was definitely more the work rather than the fact that they were some lads who happened to be born in the same country as me. But
right.
But yeah, it's I don't know, distinct. It always you always at a glance you knew it was the Bulldogs, didn't you?
For me, my favorite like gear of the Bulldogs was like when they first came into WWF, they were wearing like the red tights.
Yeah.
And they, Dynamite actually was like, so they both had the words Bulldogs on the side on the side of their tights, but the Dynamite had like a silhouette of a bulldog on the seat of his, and then Davey Boy had British Bulldogs on the seat of his. So they were the same, but they were distinct. I kind of like that for tag teams. Like you look the same, but there's distinctions that separate you, so people can tell who's who with just by the gear alone.
Yeah, very very nice. Handwritten looking font, the way British Bulldogs was written on Davey Boy's arse on those tights as well. A nice swirly writing there. Just a good old fashioned British look with that one. But yeah, like I think I'd definitely. I think there was those, and they had the sort of I don't know, like baby blue ones as well that they used to wear at the time without the Union Jack as well. It was a good look. But speaking of baby blue, I was very much enjoying the referee's attire for this match with his.
Oh yes, the legendary Joe Higuchi, who is quite known for his powder blue leisure suit referee gear. He was like the only one who would wear this I believe, because like a contemporary of his is like, or someone who would replace him, Kyohei Wada, who's of course a legendary referee in his own right. He just went for like golf shirt and black slacks usually, like so like maybe Joe Higuchi was just like, hey, no one wears a fucking leisure suit in this company except me, because Baba has decreed it so. So the famous story with Joe Higuchi and Harley Race, Gareth?
I don't think so.
So it's in Stan Hansen's biography, where Stan Hansen's relating a story where, like, Harley Race is late to get on the bus to go to the next town, and you don't want to be late in Japanese society. This is a big no-no, especially for work. So like Joe Gucci goes to look for him in the hotel cafeteria. He's like, Harley, we have to go to the next town. He's like, no, I haven't eaten breakfast yet. Okay, well, Harley, we have to go to the next town. And then it's like, no, I'm eating my breakfast first. So, Harley Race makes everyone wait on the bus while he's going to have his breakfast. And then, like he's telling this to Joe Higuchi. Joe Higuchi is the guy who is basically the liaison between Giant Baba and the foreign wrestlers who come to do tours. And Harley Race never worked for All Japan after that. You don't say no to Joe Higuchi, and you don't thus, because Joe Higuchi basically represents Giant Baba. So
I was going to say, if you're saying no to him, you're saying no to Baba, aren't you? So,
so it doesn't matter that you're a 7-time, NWA World Heavyweight Champion and a legend in the business. You don't say no to Giant Baba in Japan, and you get on the fucking bus. Anyways, that's the story with Joe Higuchi and Harley Race. But let's get into the match. It starts off with Dean Malenko and Davey Boy Smith locking up first. And, I got to say, it's quite a sight to see the much smaller Dean locking up with the massive Davey Boy Smith. And that being said, I'm always amazed that a guy that big for that era is so smooth. He's so technical. And he's so agile. Like Davey Boy Smith was a beast. Like what does JP say? A unit, right? Hey, he's a unit, and he's just like smooth as silk, just as in his own way, just as smooth as Dynamite Kid in the way he moves around in the ring. And it's just unbelievable, because you can definitely see this is a point where he's taking like steroids, because you can see the stretch marks along his chest here, along where his chest meets his underarm, and it's just like, okay, it wouldn't stay that way, unfortunately for him, but he's quite an impressive like athlete as a wrestler in this era for a guy his size.
Yeah, and I think it was, again, I think that was one of the things that made him stand out, and it definitely sort of set him apart at this time period as well, was that somebody with that size, obviously with the wrestling fundamentals that he had from the way that he'd been brought into the business, a certain style that he could work and things like that, that you've seen a lot of big jacked up guys, in the US and things, definitely not working at the same level that he was working. But then, like you say, just that natural athleticism and the speed and how smooth he was in the things that he did. And to be honest, it was one of those things that as you looked at him later in his career, it was just, it was like heartbreaking to see, kind of thing, that somebody who was in your consciousness of being able to work in that way was, essentially immobile, and his wrestling repertoire had been like reduced to such a limited limited style and limited things that he was even able to do. You were just sort of looking at a shadow of a man, really, who again wasn't even that old really at that time. In calendar years, obviously in wrestling years, and in the miles on the clock years, he was a lot older than his birth certificate said. But yeah, this period of Davey, that sort of mid to late 80s, where he's still a big guy, but his body hasn't been ruined to this point, just really sets him apart.
So Davey Boy and Dean trade holds, and Davey holds the advantage anytime it comes to using power. But Dean keeps him on his toes using his superior speed and mat skills. Dean takes over Davey Boy with a head scissors takedown and tries to go for a drop kick, but Smith has had enough of that and tags in Dynamite Kid. And I want to make a note here. I want to that at this point in time, Gareth, like the Bulldogs are pretty much legends in Japan, particularly in All Japan, because they've been working here for pretty much like like, close to a decade, just maybe shy of that. And mainly because of Dynamite, because he had the legendary feud with Sayama that spread not only in Japan but across the world. And the Malenkos have been in All Japan for about a year now at this point, so they're familiar with the stylings of these guys as singles wrestlers and particularly as a tag team. So again, like the point I made earlier is like you can hear the fans are just audibly excited to see this dream tag match here in Korakuen, and it comes through straight away. Like there's a buzz from the audience. This lockup, like Dean misses a dropkick, Davey Boy tags in Dynamite, and the crowd's like, yeah, it's great, it's amazing.
That's it, and again, it's one of those things where that's where that I talked previously about something just pulling you straight in immediately. You're just like, yeah, fuck, these people care. This feels like something. It makes it feel more special. And again, rather than it just been some throwaway match from 30 years ago that you're just watching, randomly or something like that, suddenly you're drawn right in, and you're right there with the crowd. And yeah, again, it's one of those. It just very, very simple early lockups, some simple early exchanges and things, but I'm right there with a smile on my face, deeply engaged.
Dynamite comes into a big pop, and then Dean tags in Joe Malenko. Kid takes early control with a beautiful hammerlock takeover combined with a head scissor lock. Joe escapes a cravat-style headlock and applies a nice-looking chin lock. And this is getting into this display of this amazing, like, scientific wrestling between these two, and the crowd are just eating it up. And this is where, like, you see people in the audience just like their eyes are just super focused on the stuff that's happening between Joe and Dynamite Kid. It's just amazing to see. They're not making any noise. But you can tell they're so intent and so into what they're watching here.
Definitely. And I think as well, it's one of those where, I'll often say, sometimes you can kind of get this early grapple in a match, or this early mat work that's happening in a match, and it's just people just going through sort of sequences of hold, like your turn then my turn kind of thing. But again, just the way that they're working, everything's so tight, everything's so like aggressive, so real. It's a genuine contest that they're almost like setting the tone immediately for this, and they're immediately looking for transitions, looking for reversals and things like that as well. And again, it's just it's almost chapter one in a very simplistic way for this match. Is we're just setting the tone here about what this match is going to be all about, especially because for Dynamite it is a somewhat different style that he's going to be working here, that he has worked in in other matches with some of the limitations on his body at this time period as well. So again, I think it works well just to establish where this match is going.
Davey Boy Smith tags in and goes for an armbar, but Joe is able to get to his corner and tags in Dean. Dean locks in a wrist lock, and Smith does his patented roll forward and back and into a headstand flip escape. I love that move. I don't know about you. I love whenever he does that. I'm just, when first time I ever saw it, I was like, what did he do? And then anytime he would do it afterwards, it's like, yes, love seeing that.
Yeah, no, like you say, it's patented Davey stuff, but again, it was that that escape that's putting that bit of motion into the match. I think there's obviously Dean tries to counter with like the kick to the face, and then they both do that sort of synchronized kip up at the same time, and the crowd goes absolutely bonkers just for two guys just do it's two lads doing a kip up at the same time. Which, how many shitty indie shows and things do you see the likes of that? But like here in this moment at this time, the crowd act like they go mental. It's so great, the reaction to it, and it just really kind of just like hammers home that level of investment there. And it was like Davey looks at Dean here, and there's kind of almost there's almost that in his eyes you could almost see, yeah, we've got them, like kind of thing here. It's like we know we've got them. They're in the palm of our hands here, and again that just brings a big smile to my face.
Like the word I use in my notes for that, the reaction from the crowd is they give them an ovation for a kip up, for move like transitions and reversals into a kip up, and they give them an ovation for that. This is amazing. It's genuine. Like I find like my problem with like a lot of like modern wrestling audiences is like it's performative. They do things because we think it's funny and we want to be part of the show, but but we're these fans, it's like we genuinely enjoy what we're watching and we want to show our appreciation. We don't necessarily want to be part of the match. We want to be part of the experience, if that makes a sense. You know what I mean? So I love crowds like this more than like going to, shows in North America. And it's because I think there is a sincerity that still exists, even in modern day Japanese wrestling fandom, that doesn't necessarily permeate throughout, American or maybe, British wrestling fandom. It's a lot of like, how am I going to get myself over at this show? It's like, you don't have to get yourself over because no one fucking cares. Okay. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, if you're at a show and you're thinking, what channel am I going to start to get myself over? Please just stop doing. Just appreciate the fucking show, please. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. It's a pet peeve of mine, but there you go. Anyways, Dean tries for a monkey flip out of the corner, but Davey Boy does a handstand out of it, and the crowd loves that too. You can see, and again, the crowd, the people in the front row, they're just like looking, trying to absorb every detail in this match. And again, this is what the kind of wrestling experience of like a fandom that I want to be immersed in. I don't want to be part of like, like clap, clap, clap. This is awesome. Shit, right? Like, because it just becomes like, do you really think this is awesome? It's the third match on the card and you think it's awesome. All right, sure. Okay.
It's that difference, isn't it? Between saying it because it's expected, or it's what it's almost that Pavlov's dog kind of thing of something's happened there then, so then we have to do this, as opposed to it being like genuinely like fuck, like yes, like I'm in this, I'm with you, kind of thing. And yeah, that's where it's night and day. And that's one of the best things for me always about going back to watch old stuff, and particularly older, Japanese wrestling, is that element from the crowd where it is sort of simpler times kind of thing. It's like you say, the crowd haven't been conditioned to behave in a certain way. They're just they're taking things on face value, what they see people perform in front of them, and they choose to go with it or they don't, or they're uncontrollably forced to go with it, because the stuff's so good. And again, that's what's so great about this.
Dynamite comes in and gains an immediate advantage, hitting Dean with a shoulder tackle, and then hits his incredible signature snap suplex. I love this move. First time I ever saw it was on WWF television against some jobber, and anytime he does it, it still looks good. Even with his physical limitations, he's still able to get that snap in and get Dean over. And then like me, the fans love it. It's one of his signature moves, and so they love anytime he hits it, they're gonna pop for it.
Yeah, definitely. And it was at this point where this was probably the first time that there really was like an injection of sort of pace and motion into the match here, when like off this tag to Dynamite, and obviously hitting that snap suplex that, again, it's trademark stuff. It looked as good as it ever did in this match here. But again, it was just one of those where it just brought that change of pace. Something was a bit more hard hitting with the way that was delivered at that moment again, and it just felt like, it almost just feels like the volume or the or the level of what's going on in the match. Just turned the volume up just a little bit at this point with this tag to Dynamite.
From here, Dave Boy Smith tags in and hits a top rope blow to the arm of Dean and locks in an armbar. He drives his shoulder into the breadbasket of Dean and whips him into the opposite corner where Dean halts himself, dekes out Dave Boy Smith, slips under between his legs, and then goes for and almost hits what I believe looks like a reverse Frankensteiner in 1989, which is kind of weird to say. Yeah. It doesn't actually get it fully, locks it in fully. But you know what? To his credit, Dave Boy Smith still takes a bump for it.
It looks sloppy, doesn't it? It's probably the sloppiest moment of this match. It just looks a bit awkward the way Davey falls back there. But yeah, it was a bit mind blowing to see that from this time. I think what it did achieve though, it was Malenko obviously goes for the pin immediately, and Davey Boy, the power comes to the fore here and just, press slams him out at one and just basically throws Dean across the entire ring, doesn't he? The air he gets on the length that he gets on this kick out is monumental.
Joe tags in and goes for a front neck lock that Davey Boy gets out by powering Joe on to the top turnbuckle. Joe kicks him in the gut and goes for his own version of the reverse Frankensteiner, it seems like, but he does it by hooking his legs underneath Davey's arms instead of around his head. And once again, Dave Boy Smith goes down rather clumsily, and Joe goes for a bridge, but Dave Boy kicks out at 2. It's like I believe Joe is going for a more traditional kind of takedown with the hooking of the armpits rather than like what Dean was going for. But still, unfortunately, it did not look that good.
No. Well, coming so close to the other one, I would rate this one slightly better than the Dean one. But yeah, this one didn't look great either. And given that it was Davey taking both moves, I'm guessing this was a Davey problem rather than a Malenko's problem.
Maybe. I'm sure Kenta Kobashi could have done taken both moves much smoother. Maybe. Dave Boy Smith pushes Joe into his corner where Dynamite Kid tags in, and the Bulldogs hit the double headbutt. Love that move too. And Kid goes for a top wrist lock that Joe escapes by grabbing the top rope and doing a backflip. And then he arm drags Dynamite away from him. And great sequence here. And again, this is where Joe's really starting to shine in this match by showing his agility, showing his acumen with holds and being able to escape holds himself.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's that where there's the at this point in the match, there's that the sort of exchange full Nelsons here, and Joe sort of he sort of escapes and he sort of wheelbarrows Dynamite, and then he almost sort of rolls through from there, and he ends up replaying the hold, and again, just that looks so smooth and so slick, and it just the way it's done. Again, just one of those where I'm clapping watching my TV, watching that. It's just the kind of thing that I absolutely love.
Well, when Joe catches him halfway through through Dynamite's escape and catches him in the wheelbarrow, I'm conditioned to think, he's going to suplex him, because that's what I think is going to happen. But no, he just lifts him up and reapplies the full Nelson back on Dynamite, and I'm just like, that's beautiful. Yeah. You don't need to German suplex him at this point necessarily. Yeah. And that's not something that a wheelbarrow German suplex is kind of something that's going to be innovated more closer to our era now rather than something in 1989. So, but again, it's not necessary. You just go back into this full Nelson exchange that these two guys are having. And the fact that he puts him back in there, you can see on Dynamite's face, it's like, he is so frustrated. I'm back in this fucking full Nelson again. I think it's more impactful psychologically on him than if he got hit with the German suplex.
Definitely. And again, I think it's one of these, coming back to that point that I made earlier about, the other matches, an element of kind of less is more with that. It does. I think it carries a bit more weight, and it carries a bit more expertise and excellence about it. The way that was. That transition, happened, and it ends up back in the same, in the same hold. So even trying different counters, something that just looks a bit, like it's going to go in a different direction, and then it ultimately ended up back in the same hold. Like you say, Dynamite is looking frustrated at this point, and he's looking for his own counters here, which he gets with an armbar. I think he counters out of this into an armbar, but Joe gets the better of him again.
He goes for, like, Joe gets out of by applying like a cross-legged leg lock. It's hard to describe some of these moves. You just have to watch this match to know what we're talking about.
I've got that in my notes, and I've just got 4 little love hearts next to it in my notes here, just because it was just a point that I was just like this. It's a 60-second point in the match, this or something, but Joe transitions that armbar in, so it's a leg lock, and it's kind of almost like a kneeling figure 4 to some degree, like held on his front, but he's sort of crossing Dynamite's legs and using his own body weight to push Dynamite's other leg into his shin, which obviously is causing him pain for that degree. But then he's using his own knee to sort of pivot and twist and turn his ankle at the same point. And again, it was one example of multiple things that Joe Malenko does in this match, where one hold's not good enough for him. If he's got somebody there and if he's got them in an armbar, right, he's looking to see, well, what can I do with their neck, or what can I do with their ankle or their knee, or whatever body part is close to me in my immediacy here that I can do something with. And again, it's that level of making it feel that it's a genuine contest. He's genuinely trying to hurt him. He's genuinely trying to, force that submission out of him. He's not just sitting there and lazily holding him in an armbar or something like that. It's that active and innovation in the submission attempts that comes with this as well. That's so good. These were the things that just really hit in the note with me. The small details like this that made me just want to get this match on and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every move has a purpose to it. Like the smallest thing that he can do to just enhance it, there's a purpose behind it. It's not just done, oh, it's going to look cool. Like if you think about the mechanics of it, it's like that would actually hurt. Like if you put that on me, I would probably be tapping out like within a second of like having it applied to me. But Kid, does manage to get out of it. He hits a jumping tombstone power driver, but Joe kicks out at 2. Davey Boy tags in and locks in an armbar that he transitions into a leg stretch pin combination. Again, you have to see it to understand, but it looks really great. And he goes, Davey Boy goes back to the armbar, but Joe backs him into the ropes and lays in some stiff forearms, and then hip tosses him over to go for a grapevine arm hold. But Davey Boy, again, just unbelievable like strength of this guy. He powers out of this like arm hold by standing up, just by sheer standing up, bringing all of Joe with him. And then he falls back like by basically in kind of a backdrop move and just drams like Joe's head into the mat. And it's just, again, I've seen this move from Davey Boy a lot in other matches, but always just seeing it again is just like unbelievable. Like he's basically deadlifting this guy with one arm.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Oh, and I think the thing that made this again, it's like you say, it's a spot that Davey's done in different variants over the years. But I think one of the things that really stood out in this particular instance was again that the holds that Malenko had on him was sort of it was so tight in that he absolutely had Davey pretzeled, to be the old cliche, didn't he? He had it was literally tied in a knot on the floor, and Davey was selling that pain so well. Like you really, you believed that he was in absolute agony there on the floor, and then the amount of effort that it then looked like it took to get him up there and get him on his shoulders before he could fall back. Again, it wasn't just some there you go, guys in a hold on the floor, and he just stands up and he drops back. It was they milked every inch of this, every split second of this to get to that point. And subsequently, when he did drop him and he did break the holds, then again Korakuen went crazy again. It's just a great moment, really great moment.
Dynamite Kid tags in. There's a scoop slam, a falling headbutt, a fist drop, and then he tries to take Joe's back for some kind of arm bar or arm lock. But excuse me, Joe was able to roll out, but it's towards the Bulldogs' corner. Unfortunately for him, Dave Boy Smith tags in, but Joe is able to get Dean in. Dean hits a great Northern Light suplex for a 2 count. My God, like. Think about this, the size difference between Dave Boy Smith and Dean Malenko. And Dean Malenko gets him over. I won't say effortlessly, but it's very smooth. And again, this crowd for this Northern Light suplex, they go crazy. It's unbelievable.
Oh, and just the bridge from Malenko here, and just up on his tiptoes as well,
Right.
like as he does it, and he's holding it again. It's just that minor details of execution here that just really again just makes it next level. And yeah, with it being the smallest guy in the match with the biggest guy in the match as well, you know, it just gives it that extra something.
Dean tries to press his advantage. He goes to the top rope for a missile drop kick, but Davey catches him and is able to position him into the Romero special. A move like made famous, of course, now by Bryan Danielson, and of course before that, Jushin Thunder Liger. He's able, you know, he gets him up, but Joe saves his little brother by giving him a stomp sending a stomp to Dave Boy Smith there. There's a couple of quick tags between the Bulldogs to disorient Dean, but he's too good and is able to capture Dave Boy Smith with a heel hook leg lock. Dynamite Kid tries to break it up by kicking Dean in the head, but Dean not only keeps the hold on, he cranks it even harder as a big fuck you to Dynamite Kid.
Yeah, and again, it was this was just another little brilliant nuance in the match here, that obviously up to this point there's been no element of rule breaking or anything like that. Obviously you then, you know, you get the Joe running in to break the pinfall, you know, immediately there, and that working. Dynamite then trying it in, you know, seconds later to break the other pinfall, but Dean just not breaking the hold and just cranking it in deeper and just working it a bit harder. You know, again, like you say, the great fuck off to Dynamite there, but again, just I suppose just separating almost that technical ability a bit more. You know, that was coming to the fore. Then again, another great part of this match. That.
Joe tags in and applies a step over toe hold with a bridge. Looks amazing. Then this is putting a ton of pressure on the knee joints of Dave Boy Smith. He then transitions this to a single leg crab, still working on the leg. Dean and him continue to work on the leg together until hitting a beautiful German suplex with a bridge for a close 2 count here. Dynamite Kid comes in. Dean tries for another Northern Lights suplex, but Dynamite Kid won't go over. He saw what happened to Dave Boy. Joe tags in and hits a couple of knee lifts and then snaps him over. And Great finds his head and arm. Oh, what an amazing sequence here. And we're not over, but like I just want to take a breath here and just like say this like 3 minutes of work between these 4 men is just amazing.
And again, you've chatted over there that little run of holds and things that happened over the course of that sort of 1 or 2 minute period there. You know, right back to, you know, mentioning there that sort of step over toe hold and bridge that Joe does, which you know almost is kind of the lead into this particular sequence. And again, it's just. I don't know. It's just breathtaking stuff. The counters, the transitions that are there, you know, the things that are like, you know, where it's almost like a reverse triangle, isn't it? And that Joe's doing, and he's sort of got him in an armbar at the same time, and then, you know, Dynamite's countering back the other way with like a double wrist lock, and Joe countering out with a pin with like that headlock with his legs that he does. It's just. It's real. Again, I keep coming back to this, but it's a real fight. It's real contest stuff that's happening here in front of your eyes as they both just work the best possible ways of trying to defeat each other with what's in front of them at the time. And again, technical expertise that's going on here is absolutely fantastic. And like you say, the Dynamite, ramming his shoulders into his stomach, and then they sort of, they both fall out of the ring. The crowd goes absolutely, bonkers again. The crowd goes wild again for them both falling out of the ring at the end of that movement.
That actually might be the most dangerous spot in the match. Because like they really don't do that many like high risk moves in this match, but like Dynamite Kid, just from simply doing like driving his shoulder into what is it, Joe's stomach, right? And then just they both just fall out of the ring.
Yeah.
From that, it's like that's the biggest bump in the match. I think, because most of this match is still, what are we in? Like, we're like 17 minutes in of this match,
real close.
And it's primarily been wrestling, but it's been amazing. And like the live crowd there, they're totally enraptured with it, and they don't care that they haven't seen like a massive suplex, like someone getting dropped on their head or anything like that. There's no power bombs, nothing like that, no superplexes, no top rope moves. Well, besides Dean going for the the failed missile dropkick, but that's really like not even, I would say, a high spot either. But it's this one move, and the crowd is like, "Oh my god, they're outside!"
Yeah, and this is where sometimes I just think like I sound like an old man, because where I'm talking about things like this. If you've got a match where there are 3 or 4 things like that happen that are genuinely a bit kind of more dangerous or a bit next level or something, they carry more meaning than if it happens 30 times in the match. So naturally, when something like that, it's going to make the crowd gasp a bit more. It's going to make the crowd like, oh my god, rather than if they've just seen 10 of them in the previous 5 minutes or something like that. I think this is why this style of match really appeals to me. But yeah, just to see the reaction, just to them getting up and getting back in the ring, beating the count to continue, like, brilliant, like again,
the crowd pops for, they're back in the ring. Yeah, they're clapping for that. It's amazing. Dave Boy tags in, but Joe whips him into the corner. He whips Dean after him, but Dave Boy ducks under Dean's clothesline attempt and blasts Joe with his own lariat. Looks great. Dave Boy Smith gets Joe up for his power slam and tags in Dynamite Kid and lifts and hits the power slam. He lifts Dynamite Kid up for the assisted power, gorilla press power flying headbutt. But Dean hits him with a drop kick, and he and Davey Boy fall out to the floor together. Again, this is the other probably big spot of the bump of the match, is like the Bulldogs in tandem going outside to the ring, and again, like the crowd are just like, oh my god, they're another spill out to the ring. There's a back and forth between Dynamite Kid and Joe, with Joe hitting Kid with this Northern Light suplex for a 2 count. And it's not like, and both Dean and Joe are able to hit Northern Light suplexes on the other respective team members. And this crowd now, like, this is the crescendo of the match, and this crowd's like, they were well into it before, right? But now they're going crazy now. Like, they're like, like they're on the verge of stomping their feet. They might be stomping their feet. I can't exactly remember, but like, this crowd is in a frenzy for this point. And it's because of like these two, this big bump of like them going out to the ring, coming back in, and then Joe hits a Northern Light suplex for a near pinfall. It's amazing.
I think it is as well, and I think it's maybe because I think the second time they go out, maybe there's that fear almost that, oh, is this going to end up in a count out or something like that?
Oh yeah,
like, so again, the fact that the first pop for them getting back in the ring was loud. The second pop for them getting back in the ring the second time was even louder still. So then they really bit on that Northern Lights near fall at that point as well, which again just really felt like this is the match is now. We're getting there. We're getting close to the end here, and it's suddenly accelerated very quickly in a short period of time with those two big spots at the end with the top rope bumps.
Kid starts assaulting Joe with a series of headbutts. He blocks a German suplex attempt and hits another headbutt, but Joe catches him with a fisherman suplex with hooking the leg, but Kid kicks out. Again, beautiful. Like, we're seeing basically almost nearly every variation of a suplex with some kind of a pin attempt with a bridge or a cradle, and it's like amazing. Joe goes, and here we're coming up on the end. Joe goes for a victory roll, but Kid catches him and holds him for the 1, 2, and 3. But Joe being a very smart wrestler, he kicks out of 3. I don't think that's like to devalue the win. I think it's just like, I think Bob would probably tell him, well, make it close, like make it like a close victory for them, and you guys could have won that match as well. So the Bulldogs win this match in 23 minutes and 55 seconds. So let me tell you, this is like probably one of the like fastest 24 minutes you will ever spend watching a wrestling match.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those where when I remember the first time watching this, and then I always like to try and watch anything unspoiled as much as I can, and then going back and checking the time of the match afterwards. And I couldn't believe that was how long the match had been, because it felt like half the time. It felt like it was a 12-minute match or something like that. I was so engaged in it, and it just flew by, so quickly with the level of work, what drew you in. It's odd to say that a lot happened without a lot happening in an odd way, because it was so worked around that so much of the match is grappling and holds and transitions and counters and things like that there is a lot going on, but again, compared to a modern day wrestling match where millions and millions of moves happening and things like that, it feels less. But it absolutely flies by. And I've got to admit, I say I've watched it twice again this week in preparation for today, and both times, even though it's a match that you've then seen and you're familiar with even more so, like it doesn't change. It just breezes by.
I like the fact that the win just kind of comes out of nowhere, because you feel like this is where they're going to be the point of the match, where they're just going to hit bombs on each other with suplexes and double team moves and just go for like a 5-minute sequence of like, pin attempts and kickouts and breaking up pins and things like that. But we don't get that. We get like this one mistake that Joe Malenko makes, and it's a mistake he makes. That's how Dynamite Kid beats him, is he capitalizes on a millisecond mistake by Joe Malenko, and I think that's great. You got to have finishes like that, especially like in the semi-main of a Korakuen Hall show with like almost 3,000 people in attendance. They're going to talk about this, like, oh, like this is what happened, and like it's taped for television, and people are going to be educated. Like, fans are going to be educated. Like, a win can come at any time. It doesn't have to be a massive finishing move or something that devastates their opponent. It could just be a simple mistake that's capitalized on. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking this is very similar to the finish of like Bret Hart versus Owen Hart at WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
where it's basically the same move, like where Bret's going for the victory roll, but Owen catches him.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and that's what year is that, Gareth?
That WrestleMania
after this match?
Is that 94? Maybe, is it?
Okay, so it would not be out of turn to say that maybe Bret and Owen watch this match and think we should try that finish in one of our matches if we ever fight each other.
Yeah. No, definitely, and you practically read my notes there in terms of the finishing sequence and that pinfall, because as I was trying to read some other people's opinions and things on this match, I've seen some criticism about the fact that it finishes a little bit out of nowhere, or that that it didn't go into some nice, clear, obvious finishing stretch or something like that. But to me, that was part of the beauty of this, was that it really fit the dynamic of this match for it to end in that way, because so much of this match was about them, reversing holds, trying to do something a bit innovative, people being very, very close to what appeared to be a submission, but then just eking their way out of it in some in some way or another, rather than it being he's an opponent who's just getting worn down by a series of big moves or big spots or something like that. I think the fact that, Dynamite sitting in and then Joe actually kicking out at like 3.01, it just worked within the context of everything that had gone before. It was he got caught and he was 100th of a second too slow to react and get out of it. It was one counter too far that he just couldn't manage to get his shoulder up from. And to me, it was just a perfect punctuation point at the end of this match as a whole. I loved the finish as well.
The crowd gives all four men applause, ovation, and I believe they are chanting in Japanese. They're chanting "Moi Kai, Moi Kai." That's what it sounds like to me, and would make sense because basically, for those who don't speak Japanese, "Moi Kai" means give us more. Right. So if, like, for example, I'll use in different contexts, Gareth, like if you and I were at a ramen restaurant and this ramen restaurant, like when you still have bowl, like a soup in your bowl, but no noodles left, you say, "Sumimasen, excuse me, moi kai." They'll give you more noodles right then and there. So basically the fans are like saying like they want more of this match. And like, I think they're saying more like they want to see this match again. They want to see them go maybe longer with maybe a different style next time. So unfortunately, as far as I can tell, based on my research, these two teams do not ever meet again, unfortunately. So at least nothing for that was taped and can be found on the internet. But that's okay. Like we got this one great match out of this out between these guys, and I'm happy for it. And if they had more, that would have been great to see as well. But if they didn't, c'est la vie, right? So what can you say? But yeah, I give this. I don't know if you're going to put this up on the Grappl app, but I will give it a 4-star rating here on the show. And if it's on the Grappl app, I will give it a 4-star rating over there as well.
Yeah, I thought today I need to get this up on the app because it's not currently on there, but I will. I'll definitely get it up on there, and it'll be getting a 4.5 from me. Like,
wow.
I really enjoy. I really enjoy this match, and I'd just I'd just tell anybody, go out there, and if it's worth 25 minutes of anybody's time who appreciates good wrestling, and if you're not familiar with Joe Malenko, as I'm sure is probably the least familiar out of these, watch it just for Joe Malenko here, because some of the detail that he puts into what he's doing is just chef's kiss. Lovely stuff.
You know what? Also, if you're not familiar with their kayfabe little brother Carl Malenko, go check out Carl Malenko too. He's not really their brother. Like Joe and Dean are actually brothers. Carl's not their brother, but they gave him the last name of Malenko. I forget what his other name he used in Japan was, but Carl Malenko, worth checking out. He's a really good wrestler. Wait, wasn't like fucking there's Chad, right? There's Chad Malenko, but he's like just but he's also like metal master in Mexico or something.
You tell me.
he's like who would know? Benno, because I think he was in ROH briefly.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, Benno will give us the full history.
There you go. Ask him on Spotlight next time you're on Spotlight about Chad Malenko. But definitely not a bad wrestler, but like between Joe, Dean, and Chad, and then Carl, he'd probably be like the on the lower end of the Malenko totem pole. But Gareth, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for picking this match. And where can people find more of you, more of like the things you have created for wrestling fandom?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with the Grappl app, that's GRAPPL, no E on the end. As WH said earlier on, it's a ratings app. So instead of relying on Dave Meltzer's ratings, you can put your own ratings in there, and everybody whose ratings are added up, it creates an average rating, so you can see overall and help you pick out the best matches to watch or the worst matches to avoid on that basis. There's I think there's approaching 1.5 million ratings have been put on there in total now over the last 4 years. So it's pretty mind blowing, stuff every time I do the overall count. So yeah, there's some plenty on there across about 30 different promotions, so you can pick those out. But yeah, if you visit grapplapp.com, you can get the links there to download it on App Store or download it on Google Play. We post a lot of graphics where we'll put out top 10s and things like that as well. So generally best place to see those is on our Twitter. So if you follow us at Grappl App, you can see those. And yeah, you can also see pick out the latest episodes of the Grappl Spotlight podcast as well. Again, you can you'll see the links to that if you follow Grappl App on Twitter. But otherwise, if you just search Grappl, again with no E on the end, on your favorite podcast players, you can listen to our show as well.
Yeah, it's I could say like it's a great listen. I listen to every week, even the extended version, because I do subscribe to the Patreon. So like whenever I have 7.5 hours to spare, I listen to the extended version of the Grappl Spotlight.
We can go on.
I will say, culturally, there's like 75% what you talk about culturally. I have no idea what you're talking about, because it's either about football, like real football, not that NFL stuff, or EastEnders, or Coronation Street, or the monarchy, or maybe now lack thereof recently. But yeah, so I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, but it's still good to hear the voices, because like I'm a big fan of everyone on Spotlight, including yourself, Gareth. Gareth will be invited back in the future at some point. Loved having him on this episode. For me, you can hear me, of course, on Post Perez. That's going to be coming out for the month of September. So by the time you're listening to this, we'll have the Post Perez already up between me and John Pollock. MC later with me, and currently right now with Rich Fan, we're reviewing She-Hulk, and we're heading into the slowly but surely heading into the finale of that series. It's been a lot of fun reviewing it so far. And what else? Like, I'm going to be doing something for Grappl. I'm going to be continuing talking about Star Wars over at Grappl with JP. We're still working out, by the time of this recording, Gareth, we're still working out a time to record reviews for what's been released for the show, the new Disney Plus Star Wars show, Andor. Looking forward to doing that with JP. Check that out over on Grappl as well. What else am I doing? You know what? We're gonna have some merchandise news in the future. I can't say anything more than that, but things are coming together is all I'll say. I've gotten some recent emails from some people, and it's like, that's promising. That's good. And I share, huh?
Intriguing.
Oh, well, with Gareth, I'll send you a DM with my kind of information that I already have. But yeah, for everyone else, just wait, just be patient. I'll just say this: I've shown some like these ideas to some other people, and they're all like, "Fuck, that looks good." So check it out. Anyways, for Gareth, I want to thank everyone for listening to this show. Thank you for supporting the Long and Winding Road here at postwrestling.com. And yeah, until next time, I will say goodbye.